about their Connect Downtown study and eventual plan that they're going to recommend to us. First, we'll go through our public comment period, though. That's top of our agenda. We did not have anyone sign up for public comment. Is there anyone present in the gallery that's here for the purpose of making a public comment on an item that's on our agenda today? I'm not seeing anyone in the gallery, so we will conclude our public comment period there. And we're going to jump straight into the presentation. We've got several items that I think we're going to have discussion on our regular agenda, so we're going to try to move on to our regular agenda at about 4. This committee's scheduled until 4:30, so that'll give us a half hour to address our agenda items. But I will turn it over to our folks. If you'll please check your microphones for me. Excellent.
Testing,
okay,
testing.
They're both working. If y'all would please just introduce yourselves and jump on into the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, council members, for being here today, and we look forward to the opportunity. Can you hear me okay? I feel like is it okay?
You're coming across. It's not super loud.
Okay. You guys, I trust you'll let me know if out in the audience it's not as loud as it needs to be. But again, there we go. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all today. I feel like it's still in and out.
Do we have any, Dave, are you?
Or I could shoot.
Dave is not going to see. We're hoping to find someone who can help us turn one of these microphones up.
But in the meantime, we'll just share.
Thank you, Dave. Mr. Rosenberg. In the meantime, you can really speak into it and really just give it a.
I'm going to try using this one as well.
Okay.
It's lit up with a green light, so hopefully
Okay.
that means.
Thank you.
All right, let's start that over again, y'all. Thank you again for the opportunity, Councilman, and for the committee for this opportunity to share an update on Connect Downtown, which is our 10-year action plan to keep downtown moving. I've got Jennifer Whalen here from Nelson Nygaard. She's going to do the bulk of our presentation. Felix Castrodot from WeGo is making his way up here as well. Let's see. Just wanted to make sure that we give you guys a good introduction to the project. We haven't had an opportunity for the full group to hear a good briefing from start to finish. We've been working for the last 2 years on this project with the community and stakeholders. And again, we're really excited to be able to present the draft recommendations to you here today. And we have, there's Felix again. And so we'll be answering questions at the end, but we'll start with a brief presentation from Jennifer. So I'll hand it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Marty. Good afternoon, everyone. Just get myself resituated here. So as Marty said, my name is Jennifer Wieland. I am with Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates. We are a transportation planning and engineering firm, and I have had the honor of leading the consultant team for Connect Downtown. We have some wonderful local partners, including some who are here with us today. We've been supported by KCI Technologies, and Beth Ostrowski is here with us. We also have local engagement partners, including Fairpoint Planning, Varello Public Relations, and Dugard Communications, and then some other national partners, including Alta Planning and Design and Transpro. So I just wanted to acknowledge them as we get started. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work that we've had underway for the last couple of years. But let's start by talking about why Connect Downtown? Why are we even doing this work? I think many of you have been involved in so many planning efforts over the years in Nashville. And the Metro Nashville Transportation Plan, among others, identified the need for a project really focused specifically on downtown. You may remember that In Motion, which was adopted in 2016 and was the local and regional transit plan, put a gray box around downtown. And so part of what Connect Downtown strives to do is to uncover that gray box and really think about what the local and regional transportation network looks like centered on downtown Nashville. Aside from the fact that this is a planning effort that has been identified in multiple plans, there is so much happening in downtown right now. Growth has been really incredible, both in terms of residential growth, also in terms of job and visitor growth. There is a tremendous amount of office space under construction downtown, and we know that downtown is the economic heart of the region in so many ways. That leads to a handful of challenges that we'll talk about more in just a minute. But the other thing I want to note is that Connect Downtown really came at the perfect time because there are so many other planning efforts underway that link into this. including Imagine East Bank, the Second Avenue recovery efforts, and the River North and Edge Hill efforts as well. So we were fortunate for this entire project to be guided by 4 partners. You met Marty with the Nashville Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, and certainly many folks at NDOT have played a critical role. As Marty mentioned, Felix Castrodad with WeGo has been the lead on WeGo public transit side of things. And our other partners include the State Department of Transportation and the Nashville Downtown Partnership. This core client team has met a minimum of every 2 weeks over the last 2+ years to really guide the work that we're doing. We focused on coming up with a comprehensive, integrated, and multimodal solution for downtown, and that is really what you'll see today. Our study area started with a focus on the area inside the interstate loop, but we did look about a half a mile beyond that boundary because, of course, there is no hard edge to downtown. And then we started to also look at the ways that our recommendations link into other regional networks and recommendations. So what are those challenges that we are trying to address? I'll just highlight these really quickly because I think they're familiar to everybody who lives in this region. When we talk about people being stuck in traffic, yes, that is people driving who lose about 80 hours a year during peak commute periods. And that is a regional number. That is not just a downtown number. But it's also about what happens when people who are in buses get stuck in traffic, when emergency vehicles get stuck in traffic. So traffic congestion really is a significant challenge to address for downtown. In terms of travel options that don't match desires, we have about 80% of the people who come into downtown Nashville today who travel by themselves in a car. And what we heard through all of the outreach that we did is that's not what people want. People want options. They want to have choices for how they get downtown. We know that our transit system can be slow and a little bit unreliable. We might have a very quick trip that comes to the edge of downtown, and then it can take 45 minutes to go from Demonbreun to Church Street on the bus. When the bus is slower than walking, that's not a real option for people. Nashville's popularity is, of course, a wonderful thing. The challenges that it presents are days, for example, when we might have multiple events happening downtown. And that is the norm. That is not a one-off thing the way that so many cities experience it. Loading space is a challenge in so many bustling cities. I think the reason that it is particularly important in Nashville is that you do have relatively constrained rights of way. You don't have unlimited space. You don't have really wide streets. And so the curb becomes really important, and the uses of the curb and the way that they change throughout the day are also important. From delivering goods in the morning to all of the bars and restaurants on Lower Broad to delivering people to downtown throughout the day, the curb has to do a lot of different things. And then, of course, the council is so familiar with Vision Zero and Nashville's efforts there. 47 of the high injury network corridors are partially in downtown, partially in our study area. And so really creating safe, comfortable ways for people to travel was a key opportunity. So a little bit about what we did over the course of the project. We started in very early 2021. We collected some new data, we analyzed that data, and really tried to understand the existing conditions in downtown as well as the future needs. We were coming out of lockdown at that point. We were in a slightly different phase of people returning to work and understanding how people were going to travel. And so it was a really interesting moment to think about the future of mobility downtown. We set goals for the project, and we did some best practices and strategy development work through the mid part of 2021. And one thing that I want to note there's a lot of resources available on the project website for folks who are interested. People always say, well, who did you use as your peer cities? Nashville's unique. It's not like any other place. And that is true. But every city can say that in some way. And so what we tried to do in our best practices research was really pull in some lessons learned from other places to help generate some ideas. We took those out to the community, and this was our second big round of community outreach, and asked people to help mix and match different solutions and really shape their own scenario for downtown. And we'll talk more about what that generated in a second. We then developed some of our priority solutions, costs, and phasing, and kept refining those potential solutions with more outreach, with more stakeholder conversations to get to the point of draft recommendations that we released in late 2023. We got great feedback on those recommendations, and that's led us to revise those draft recommendations, do another round of engagement with some of our key stakeholders. Marty and Felix have done a whole host of briefings over the last month, and we are now hopefully ready to move forward toward council adoption and then, of course, continuing implementation. Two more things in terms of background. I just want to note the goals of the plan. We did identify 6 goals that really address those challenges that I teed up for you before. And so our focus throughout the planning effort has been on creating a safe and comfortable downtown transportation system that really enhances people's quality of life, a system that's easy to use, that's really seamlessly connected, and that works for everybody, no matter how you're traveling, what your age or ability might be, or what your income level might be. We've also really focused on more sustainable and resilient options. So it's a system that works even in the event of something happening. And also really making it easy for business to work in downtown Nashville. It's not just about visitors, it's not just about people coming in and out, but also about our businesses. And then that focus on a reliable system. One that isn't so fragile that when you've got an event, everything just stops working. I've mentioned community engagement a number of times, and we had 4 major periods of engagement and then kind of continuous engagement throughout the project. We also were fortunate to work with a stakeholder task force and technical advisory committee throughout, who provided great input and really helped to shape everything we did. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the numbers that you might see, and then I've also listed on this slide a number of the stakeholder groups that we engaged with over the course of the project. We really want to appreciate the input from all of these folks and just how much of a difference it made in shaping the recommendations. I want to note specifically our downtown merchants and downtown residents, as well as many of the delivery drivers and service providers who spent time with us out on the street and showed us where some of the toughest spots are to unload their trucks and what some of the needs are moving forward. So all of that input, of course, was coupled with a lot of technical analysis. And we could talk for a very long time about modeling, but what you need to know from all of the analysis we did is that our analysis showed over and over as we looked at the recommendations that doing nothing isn't an option. Traffic already comes to a standstill. People moving already come to a standstill in downtown Nashville today. And when we add 10 years of growth to that, things only get worse. It really just means that people are stuck at intersections, buses are stuck in traffic, our emergency responders can't get through. And so we really do know that we need to take action and that we need to do more than just build projects. This is also about giving people options so they have different ways to travel and can make the choice that makes the most sense for them depending on when and where they are trying to go. We did really see the set of recommendations I'm going to share with you as a system. Doing just one thing is not going to fix downtown Nashville's transportation challenges. And so we looked at a series of 5 big moves that work together to address all of the different parts of mobility downtown and make the system work better for downtown and for the entire region. I'll go into each of those big moves in a second, but I want to highlight just a few of the changes that we made to our draft recommendations based on people's feedback. We heard a lot about the challenges of converting streets downtown from one-way to two-way, from two-way to one-way. That's happened a lot over the years, and that is one of the beautiful things about our streets. They are flexible, but we did hear a lot from people that we want to make sure we've done some of the easier improvements first, some of the low-hanging fruit that focuses on technology and signals before we start changing the way that our streets operate. So we've made some changes to the phasing because of that. We've also expanded some of the policy and program recommendations, including transportation demand management, to really build on work that is already underway and make a difference to how people are traveling. We've expanded some of the transit corridors we're looking at, and then also really focused on simplifying the recommendations for the curb. I think we've all been in situations where we're trying to park and we see 12 signs and we're not sure which one applies to us. And so we've really tried to make that simple so it's easy for people to use. But at the end of the day, we want to be focused on things that are going to make a difference as quickly as possible, easy wins, quick wins when we can use them, and dealing with technology, signals, and enforcement for sort of cleaning up and managing some of the transportation chaos that you might see in parts of downtown. So I'm going to run through each of the big moves very quickly so that we have plenty of time for discussion. But I'm going to start with the first big move, which was manage congestion. What I want to note here, what you see in orange throughout each of these slides, are some of the recommendations that we have teed up as near-term actions. I think you've probably heard a good deal about the Traffic Management Center that NDOT is going to be opening this year. The Traffic Management Center paired with the adaptive signals is really one place that we believe Connect Downtown's recommendations can be implemented first. Those two pieces together give NDOT the ability to manage the streets, manage the signals in real time, so that if, for example, after an event, you've got a ton of people that are waiting to cross the street coming out of Bridgestone, you can give them more walk time to be able to do that. Or if you see one of WeGo's buses coming and it's about to be stuck at an intersection for a couple of light cycles, you can add a little bit more green time to that light cycle and make sure the bus gets through. The same thing works for people driving, of course, and so adaptive signals are really an important piece of doing something quickly to update the pretty old signal system that is in downtown, and then also to help people using all modes of transportation move. On the side of some of the more programmatic pieces, again, expanding the Transportation Demand Management Program, Nashville Connector, and looking at some of the enhancements that amplify Vision Zero recommendations and enforcement, we believe are going to be really important to manage congestion. You'll see that the operational conversions are not highlighted as near-term recommendations. The reason for that is that we want to see how some of the initial changes work, continue evaluating, and obviously continue working directly with stakeholders. You'll see a lot of blue and purple lines on that map that reflect some of the conversations we've had to date, but there's a lot more evaluation and discussion needed to be able to move anything like that forward. I've mentioned transportation demand management a couple of times, and I think the piece that I want to note here for you is just that when we give people travel options and when we make it easy for people to do something different for some of their trips, whether that is take the bus or bike or walk, it really frees up more space on our streets and provides a lot of opportunity for more people to travel. And so when we talk about TDM, it really is about how do we help these Connect Downtown recommendations have more of a regional impact. The second big move is to improve safety. And this big move just amplifies so much of the work that NDOT has underway in terms of Vision Zero, focusing our near-term recommendations on capital projects, on leading pedestrian intervals, those signals that give people walking a head start, and then on some of the educational programs that really help people understand how critical it is to keep people safe on our streets. Some of the near-term projects that NDOT already has underway include corridor safety studies for a couple of key corridors downtown, and a focus on some of the intersections where people have been injured and unfortunately have lost their lives over the years, and those are both signalized and unsignalized intersections. And so these are places, again, that NDOT is not waiting to move forward, but is trying to make changes as quickly as possible. Moving on to our Move More People recommendations. So these are our transit-focused recommendations. I know transit has been a big topic of discussion for many years, and what I want to highlight here are really three key things on the capital side. In terms of mobility centers or transit centers, Sobro Mobility Center is one that has been in planning documents for many years. Connect Downtown recommends moving forward with the design of that as quickly as possible, and that certainly will complement a downtown network that will include a future East Bank Mobility Center as well. You'll see in the thick gray lines on this map 3 transit priority corridors. And when we talk about a transit priority corridor, those are corridors that are doing more than just moving buses. They are complete streets, and so they work for people driving, they work for our emergency responders. They have great access for people who are walking, biking, and rolling, really high quality stops, and they are carrying multiple bus routes. So in the future, when service is improved, you can see a bus every 3 to 4 minutes on a transit priority corridor. And they are hop on and hop off. You don't have to go from one transit center to another, but they really provide that fast, frequent service in downtown. So Connect Downtown recommends 3 transit priority corridors: the west side that takes you from Sobro Mobility Center up Lafayette, Rosa Parks and 8th Avenue, around the Horn on James Robertson and connects to WeGo Central. The James Robertson corridor, which links over the bridge and connects to the new East Bank Mobility Center, and then the new East Bank Transit Priority Corridor, which has been envisioned through the work that is underway on the East Bank. That important loop, as you look at it, right, has really big regional impacts because it gives the ability to redesign service in different ways and serve more parts of Nashville and of the region. So there are big benefits both for MTA routes as well as RTA routes. And then also, part of what we want to look at is additional transit priority on other key corridors. You see spot improvements on 3rd and 4th Avenue highlighted so that we're not forgetting about the interior part of downtown. And then in the black lines, you see many of the bus routes that were identified as major routes in the Better Bus Plan, as well as 8th Avenue South. So it's really about how we are connecting people into and out of downtown, as well as moving them around. The other piece of our transit recommendations focuses on service. How do we enhance service so that you are finding buses much more frequently? They are operating for longer hours, up to 24 hours in some cases. And then that gives us the ability to redesign the network a bit so that we're providing more service to some of the areas that are developing, being able to increase trips region-wide, look at better connections to the WeGo Star, for example, at Riverfront Station, and really think about how what we are doing to improve downtown has huge benefits throughout the region. Our 4th big move focuses on our active transportation network. So for people walking, biking, and rolling, we have a network of mobility lanes that advances the priorities identified in the walk and bike plan and builds on those. You'll see that certain facilities that are already existing get upgraded to a higher standard where we've got more separation and more protection for people so that everybody's got their own space, and we're really creating a network that is very safe and comfortable for people of all ages and abilities. Just like when we looked at the transit map, part of what this network does is connect to other things that are happening outside of downtown, including the East Nashville Spokes Project and so many of the other projects that have been on the books and are now underway. We also recommend advancing the planned Greenway network and then looking at some key connections that address the challenges of getting, for example, from the Gulch up into the heart of downtown, whether that be stairways or elevators, escalators, other types of multimodal links. And so some of the early projects for creating complete networks, again, focus on how do we advance those key linkages into and out of downtown. This is a rendering from the East Nashville Spokes Project that is looking at improving connections across the Woodland Street Bridge, which links right into the recommendations that we've made in Connect Downtown. The last of the big moves, and I will wrap this up quickly so we can hear a little bit about what's on your minds. The 5th big move is to maximize the curb. And what do we mean by that? This is really about thinking how the curb can do more than just one thing throughout the day. When we think about downtown Nashville and how it is used, how the curbs are used, what you see during the day is really different than what you see at night. You've got a ton of deliveries and service vehicles that are operating during the day. And as you move into the later afternoon, you start to see more passenger pickup and drop off. And so we want to take a flexible approach to the curb that changes throughout the day, but gives people the space they need to keep things moving. So one of the early actions focuses on a pilot project as well as expanding some of the curb enforcement so that, again, if we're going to have regulations in place, people need to be following those regulations. The pilot project that NDOT is exploring right now is working with a vendor to prepare for a smart loading zone pilot. And this would really be focused on the downtown core and specifically Lower Broad. It gives people who have goods to deliver the opportunity to reserve a space, to be able to know that they are going to have a place that they can deliver what they need to, and will really keep the system working better throughout the day. So that's a lot of recommendations. There are, what did we count? Over 200 individual projects recommended in Connect Downtown. But the way that they all come together is about linking to what else is happening in the region. It is about advancing, some of what's included in TDOT's Transportation Modernization Act. It's building on the new transit centers, including the North Nashville Transit Center that WeGo is advancing. It is linking to things like the Charlotte Corridor Rail with Greenway, as well as so many of the other projects that are critical for the region. And so when we think about Connect Downtown, it is about building out that central multimodal core that really makes everything else work much better. And to wrap up, I'll just mention again in terms of phasing, although Connect Downtown and this planning process is coming to an end, it certainly is not the end of engagement. It's certainly not the end of discussion about the projects that have been recommended. We are going to start with that focus on the traffic management center and adaptive signals, as well as some of the technology and some of the enforcement and early actions that are going to make a lot of difference quickly. By evaluating and reassessing as we go, that's going to give NDOT and the partners an opportunity to make changes and to start digging into some of those bigger projects sooner rather than later, because there is a lot of design that is required to move these forward. We will have the final action plan posted no later than April 12th on the project website, which you can link to using this QR code. There are a lot of materials already there and certainly would invite people to review those. And then Metro Council will consider a resolution on April 16th to adopt Connect Downtown. And with that, Marty or Felix, anything that you'd like to add? No. Okay. With that, I think we would welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thanks. If everybody's got a question, could put your hands up. I've got Councilmember Allen, Councilmember Coopin. Anybody else right now? Horton Ellis. Anybody else right now for the first round? Okay, we'll go to you, Councilmember Allen. You are recognized.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. This is exciting information. 3 questions. One, can you talk about will the circulator come back? I mean, it may be coming back under another name, so you may have described it through one of the other things, but there used to be 2 different free routes that you could just jump on and jump off, and the people who understood how to use it loved them. Is that part of this, or could it be?
Certainly it could be. We do talk in Connect Downtown about the potential, for example, a privately funded circulator as being an important connection to Riverfront Station, to the transit priority corridors. I think I can ask Felix to chime in, but I think part of what WeGo saw with the circulator was that it was moving so slowly because of the congestion downtown that it was not a better option than walking for many people. And so it is something I think that as we consider the ways that we want to help people connect to different parts of the network, could be revisited in the future, but I would say there's some other investment that needs to happen to make that really work. You want to add to that?
Thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer touched on it, and basically, council member, the circulator was not. It was more seen for tourists than for locals trying to actually move around downtown because of what Jennifer highlighted. It was not moving any faster than you could walk sometimes. So it was detrimental for people trying to use it to actually move around. We haven't closed the door on that, but at this point, if we can achieve better connectivity through downtown with our overall service, I think it's also another option that people will come to value.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Second, we talked about enforcement, which I think is great. Does that, or could that include enforcement of transportainment vehicles that are perhaps not doing what they know they're supposed to be doing?
Yes, absolutely. There are a couple of pages in the final action plan that talk about recommendations for entertainment transportation vehicles. encouraging that as Connect Downtown recommendations are implemented, the Transportation and Licensing Commission and certainly others who have purview look really closely at the number of permits that are issued and also enforce those along with the guidelines.
And then, thank you, final question. Is there data about mobility centers? Because I just know as a bus rider, anytime I see that I've got to transfer, that is kind of an immediate, oh shoot, this is going to be more trouble than it's worth. And there are some cities that have really complicated bus lines, but the bus just goes different directions as opposed to having to go to one transfer station into another. So is there some kind of study that was done to determine that mobility centers will function more quickly or better than just having more bus routes to choose from?
Yeah, part of the value of mobility centers or transit centers, there are a couple of key things. One, it does provide a point of transfer for people who need to switch routes. It can also be a place where you're connecting to a different mode of transportation. So let's say you've taken a bus into the new Sobro Mobility Center and you've got a little bit of a distance to go. It's kind of hot. You don't really feel like walking. You hop on an electric B-cycle for your last little bit. So it can be a connection point between routes and between modes. But all of the data on transferring between routes from cities across the country, and I think from Nashville as well, show that when the service is really frequent, there isn't what we sometimes call a transfer penalty. People see the bus that they are waiting for and are able to hop on it. I think the other important thing about the mobility centers is that we're not forcing people to transfer. There are many routes that will continue through, but it just is that point of connection for people who really need it and provides a lot of opportunity for WeGo service to be redesigned to just better serve people.
Great. And then final question, can you talk about what that frequency goal would be to make it reach that threshold of getting rid of the transfer penalty that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Is that 3 to 4 minutes?
I mean, in a perfect, so if all of the service that has been identified in past WeGo plans is implemented, we would be looking at a bus on the transit priority corridors every 3 to 4 minutes. But when you're talking about transfers at a mobility center, the typical rule is that people don't want to wait more than 10 minutes for pretty much anything in life. So anything we can do to keep it under 10 minutes is a really great threshold. You want to add anything?
All right, thank y'all. I've got 3 more people in the queue, and just if everyone could be mindful that we need to switch over to our normal business at about 4. So next in the queue, I had Councilmember Coopin. Councilmember Coopin, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say a huge thank you to the entire team that worked on Connect Downtown. I've been involved with this from fairly early on and watched y'all work very, very hard and do a number of public engagement sessions and meetings and hearing concerns and making changes to the plan. So just want to express my appreciation for the time and effort and energy that you guys and everybody else spent on this plan, and really excited to see it start to implement. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, we have Councilmember Horton. Councilmember Horton, you are recognized.
Thank you for being here today, and thank you for the presentation. It was super exciting and informative. You mentioned the scope of the study was defined by the interstate loop surrounding downtown. I wonder, as any part of the study or this project, did we examine the desirability of having an interstate loop encircling downtown in the center of our city?
We did not tackle that as part of Connect Downtown.
Okay, thank you. One other question. I think there's a couple marinas in my district, and businesses oriented towards the water that are interested in pursuing water taxis in the near future. Is that something that's could be accommodated as part of this? Is that something that's, I guess, been examined?
We did not look at water-based transportation as part of Connect Downtown, but it is absolutely something that has come up in some conversations and I think could fit really well with the network, especially as the East Bank develops.
Okay, covering a lot of ground really quickly. Third question, have you noticed any change in the composition of travel patterns in and out of downtown, perhaps as a lower occupancy rates in office settings in particular? Has there been a decrease in people commuting for office jobs? Is that expected to recover in the near medium term?
This is such an interesting phenomenon across the country, and it is different in every city. So some of what we've seen in Nashville is that the peak periods are getting a lot longer, and they are not necessarily as intense as they had been in the past, but they are stretching out. We also see that certain days of the week are much heavier for travel. I'm sure you all have experienced this. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays tend to be the heaviest days for commute patterns. But, you know, occupancy in downtown Nashville, even though it is down from pre-pandemic levels, has really bounced back compared to a lot of cities. I think there have been some great studies done about the recovery of downtown Nashville and just what we're seeing. And so, yes, we are seeing the patterns change a lot, but we're not really seeing a huge drop in terms of the numbers of people who are making trips into downtown.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, I have Councilmember Ellis. Councilmember Ellis, you're recognized.
Thank you. One question that I had is, what were some of the feedback and how is that being implemented in the plan for folks that live south of the airport but work downtown and, you know, making their commute a little bit faster and easier?
Yeah, great question. So some of what we have heard from people outside of downtown South being one good example is a couple of things. There is a real interest in being able to have transit service that operates more frequently, more reliably, and for more hours of the day. And so really expanding the amount of WeGo bus service that's available and then making sure those trips both get into downtown and through downtown faster was really critical. So I would say that that is one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we've heard. We've also heard a lot from people about the one important thing that needs to happen outside of downtown to really make it possible for people to use WeGo service is to have better walking and biking connections to bus routes. And so that is another theme that has come up. Certainly people see a lot of, for those who are driving, people see a lot of pinch points around the interstate ramps. And so find that to be a challenge as they are entering downtown. So really looking at ways that we can smooth the flow into and out of downtown for people through the signalization changes we've been talking about and other improvements linked to some of those investments that will make a difference for people outside of downtown. Can I add anything? Anything? Okay.
Councilmember Ellis, anything else? Thank you. Thank you very much. All good. I had one quick question, so we got a couple minutes left. You know, talking about adaptive signals, and I know that we applied for a grant with the state to try and get those implemented, and this isn't exactly in the scope of your presentation, but do we know the status of that grant application?
Yes, so we actually applied for a grant with GNRC for that. So we are sure they awarded $3.2 million for the downtown core for adaptive signal technology. That is not everything that we need. So we're actually in the process of developing another grant submittal that would help fill out the remaining portion of the downtown signal network, but also some additional early implementation items from Connect Downtown.
Fantastic. Thank you all for pursuing those opportunities and being successful there. Any other questions members or folks who are not members of this committee would like to ask about the Connect Downtown? I did see Director Alicone is present in the back and jumped up for a sec. Do you wish to be recognized, Director? Okay, well, thank you for joining us. Okay, well, with that being that, I really appreciate y'all coming out here to present to us, and we look forward to consideration of this at the next meeting. You're hoping to have it in front of us? Excellent. So everybody look out for that on your agendas for the next meeting.
Thank you all.
So, folks, before we get to the regular agenda, we did kind of acknowledge and hold our public comment period at the beginning of the meeting. But as I understand, you know, we started early for a presentation, and we have since had a member of the public connected with staff and requested to make a public comment. So we are going to accommodate that request because I think we've got time to do so today. So we've got Mr. Steve Ryder wanting to speak on RS 2024-351, the Cumberland River Study. You'll have 2 minutes to speak, sir. I will turn your podium on, and your 2 minutes begins now.
Thank you for the accommodation, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I would respectfully ask that this resolution be withdrawn. I don't think this is the best way to move forward, frankly. I think what we really need to do is have a constructive conversation about increasing extremely low-income housing production. That is the way we're going to go out and deal with homelessness. That's the best way to go about it. The approaches that we've seen enough punitive approaches over time, and frankly, they just don't work. I know I saw John Rose, the representative from the 6th District, and he's working at the federal level to increase the tax credits that are available for housing. I know at the state legislature, you've heard me talk about expanding bond capacity for housing, and there's a bill up there that's doing that. I'm not sure it's going to pass, but it's out there. And so what I'm trying to do is we need to really work together to try to solve the issues rather than what's been happening during the years. That hasn't worked. Frankly, the $50 million that the community thought, oh, this is coming from the federal government and that's going to solve all of our problems, that really wasn't very well thought out. They talked about shovel-ready projects, and frankly, that just wasn't the case. So I know this has been a topic of conversation for many years. I've been around this issue for many, many years. Frankly, homelessness is increasing. And we talk about the missing middle. I know the planning department's working on that. That is a problem too. But I'm here to specifically address the extremely low income housing production. Thank you very much, and look forward to talking with some of the sponsors on this going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Excellent. So that will conclude our second public comment period. And thank you so much, as always, for members of the public for joining us. All right, so folks, we've got several items on the agenda that I'm anticipating discussion on, so we're going to jump right in. I've got a proposed consent agenda. So I'm going to read through those items. I'm going to say the committee agenda item number, and then I'm going to tell you the bill number, and then I'm going to tell you the sponsors. And this is the proposed consent agenda. If anything that I list here needs to come off consent, you can let me know after I read them. If you have anything that needs to be pulled, actually, how about you just wait to see what I propose, and then if anything else needs to be pulled, we just go with that. Okay. Well, thank you, members. All right, so we'll start with committee item 2. This is on the consent agenda. Committee item 2, RS 2024-270 by Coopin, Porterfield, Gamble, and others. Committee agenda item 3, this is RS 2024-345 by Porterfield, Gamble, and Parker. Committee item 4, RS 2024-346 by Gamble, Porterfield, and Parker. Committee item 5, this is RS 2024-347 by Porterfield and Parker. Committee item 6, RS 2024-348 by Welsh, Gamble, and Parker. Committee item 7, RS 2024-349 by Coopin, Gamble, and Parker. Committee item 8, RS 2024-350 by Coopin, Gamble, and Parker. Committee item 9, RS 2024-351 by Coopin, Horton, and Huffman. Committee item 12, BL 2024-291 by Porterfield, Coopin, Welsh, and Parker. Committee item 13, BL 2024-292 by Allen, Coopin, Parker, and Vo. Committee item 15, BL 2024-294 by Ewing, Wiener, and Vo. Committee item 16, BL 2024-296 by Coopin, Gamble, and Parker. Committee item 17, BL 2024-297 by Coopin, Gamble, and Parker. Committee item 18, BL 2024-298 by Stiles, Gamble, and Parker. Committee item 19, BL 2024-299 by Coopin, Gamble, and Parker. Committee item 20, BL 2024-300 by Vo, Gamble, and Parker. Do any of those items need to come off? Councilmember Evan Siegel. That's committee items 2 and committee items 15. Okay, I saw Councilmember Allen. Oh, pardon me. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could we pull RS 2024-347 and 351 and BL 2024-291?
291.
Yes, sir.
All right, we've
Thank you.
removed those. Did I see Councilmember Coopin? It's already pulled. Anybody else have anything they'd like to remove from the consent agenda for discussion? Okay, well, I will read through the captions of all the items remaining on the consent agenda. All right. Committee Item 3, RS 2024-345 by Porterfield, Gamble, and Parker. This approves a preliminary engineering agreement between CSX Transportation, a Virginia corporation with its principal place of business in Jacksonville, Florida, and the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure to facilitate the development of bridge repairs and painting at Walton Lane, Hart Lane, Division Street, Woodland Street, Nashville Zone, and Nashville Terminal Subdivision. Committee Item 4, this is RS 2024-346 by Gamble, Porterfield, and Parker. This approves an intergovernmental license agreement between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County Metro, acting by and through the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, NDOT, and the State of Tennessee, acting by and through its Commissioner of Transportation, the state, granting NDOT permission to use an underpass on Morewood Drive in the Parkwood neighborhood under the Briley Parkway State Route 155 bridge to install, operate, and maintain transportation art. Committee Item 6, RS 2024-348 by Welsh, Gamble, and Parker. This amends Ordinance BL 2022-1514 of the Metropolitan Government to acquire permanent and temporary easements through negotiation, condemnation, and acceptance for the Radnor Street Stormwater Improvement Project for 9 properties located on Radnor Street, Morton Avenue, and Timmons Street. Committee Item 7, this is RS 2024-349 by Coop, Gamble, and Parker. This amends Ordinance Number BL 2022-1096 to authorize the Metropolitan Government to modify the linear feet of water main and fire hydrant assembly being abandoned and accepted, and to accept steel casing pipe for property located at 804 14th Avenue North. Committee Item 8, RS 2024-350 by Coop, Gamble, and Parker. This amends Ordinance Number BL 2022-1094 to authorize the Metropolitan Government to accept additional sanitary sewer main, sanitary sewer manhole, and steel casing pipe for property located at 806 16th Avenue North, also known as the Lofset Marathon. Committee Item 13, this is BL 2024-292 by Allen, Coop, and Parker and Vo. This amends Section 1308050 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws with respect to planting trees, brushes, hedges, and other landscape amenities within the right-of-way of any street within the area of the Metropolitan Government. Committee Item 16, BL 2024-296 by Coop, Gamble, and Parker. This authorizes PR2SH Peabody Union Apartments Owner LLC to construct and install an underground encroachment at 30 Peabody Street. Committee Item 17, BL 2024-297 by Coop, Gamble, and Parker. This amends the GIS street and alleyway centerline layer for the Metropolitan Government by abandoning a portion of Russell Street right-of-way and utility easements between Interstate Drive and South First Street, and a portion of South Second Street right-of-way and utility easements between Woodland Street and Victory Avenue. Committee Item 18, this is BL 2024-298 by Stiles, Gamble, and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to accept new public water and sanitary sewer mains, fire hydrant assemblies, sanitary sewer manholes, and easements for property located at 2215 Edge of Lake Drive, also known as Canyon Ridge Phases 4 and 6. Committee Item 19, this is BL 2024-299 by Coop, Gamble, and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to abandon an existing public sanitary sewer main for 5 properties located on Peabody Street, 3rd Avenue South, and President Ronald Reagan Way, also known as 2nd and Peabody. Lastly, Committee Item 19, this is BL 2024-300 by Vo, Gamble, and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to abandon existing public water and sanitary sewer mains, sanitary sewer manholes, and easements, and to accept new public water and sanitary sewer mains, sanitary sewer manholes, relocation of fire hydrant assemblies, rehabilitation of existing sanitary sewer main, realignment of existing water main and sanitary sewer manholes and easements for 13 properties located on Martin Street, Humphrey Street, and Brown Street, also known as WeHo Phase 3. All right, that is our consent agenda. Does anything need to come off of that consent agenda? Seeing none, can we get a motion on the consent agenda? All right, properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, thank you. Recommend approval of the consent agenda. 9. 9, thank you. All right, back to our first item that was not on consent. This is RS 2024-270 by Coop, Porterfield, Gamble, and others. This approves a memorandum of understanding related to the proposed development of a multi-use performance space for the Tennessee Performance Arts Center on East Bank property owned by the Metropolitan Government. Do we have a motion? Properly moved and seconded. I will go to the bill's lead sponsor, Councilmember Coopin. Councilmember Coopin.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to provide a brief comment, if I may. Supportive of moving this for approval through the committees today. Just want to let everyone know that the goal is to move it through committees today, and then defer on the floor, again, as we've talked about, so that it lines up with hopefully the third and final reading of the East Bank legislation. So just setting some expectations there, but very supportive of this piece of legislation and appreciate the administration bringing forward a great deal for us. So with that, I move approval as well.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none. All right, so all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions or not voting? Got one abstention, Councilmember Evan Siegel. All right, next item we have left is Committee Item 5. This is RS 2024-347 by Porterfield and Parker. This approves a contract between the Metropolitan Government and the TDH Company, LLC, for the provision of Duperon, Enviromix, Xylem Sanitaire, and Shand and Jers products, parts, and services for the Central Water Reclamation Facility. Do we have a motion on this? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? I see Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is great. I just had one question I wanted to ask. I was part of the group that got the tour of the Reclamation Center in our day in the life, as you were. It was very cool. And at that time, we talked about the flare and that Metro Water Services working as hard as they could to get rid of that in whatever way they could. So that wasn't totally covered in this, and I just wondered if there's some way to just get assurance that you want to minimize that, and if they discover a way to have no flare, then that would not be part of what they do.
I'll go to Water Services in the back. If you'd please introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon to the council. John Honeysucker, Assistant Director of Waste Services. The flare, that is one of our objectives, is to get rid of that flare and to minimize that. So this is with the renovation and of the plant. That's one of the top priorities. So hopefully that will come with time, and that's what we're working for.
Okay, thank you. I'm just glad to get that on the record. Appreciate it, Mr. Honeysucker.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Ms. Honeysucker. Any other discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor of RS 2024-347, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? Thank you much. Recommend approval. Next, we have RS 2024-351 by Coopin, Horton, and Huffman, a resolution requesting certain departments of the Metropolitan Government provide a comprehensive analysis of recommended changes to increase the safety, security, housing resources for the unhoused, and cleanliness of the properties surrounding the Cumberland River within the downtown interstate loop. Do we have a motion on this? Moved. Can we get a second? Properly moved and seconded. All right. Any discussion on RS 2024-351? I see Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand the motive behind this, but I'm just wondering how data-driven this is. I know we've had one very tragic incident recently and a tragic incident a couple of years ago regarding an unhoused individual. But if 2 incidents in several years, is that enough to drive a major change and possibly, I don't know, fencing or whatever? So I just would like to know if there's any data behind the call for the study.
Thank you, Councilmember. And we may go to the lead sponsor for that. I apologize. I generally look to recognize the lead sponsor first on legislation, and I failed to do that there. So we'll go over to Councilmember Coopin, and if you want to address that or if you want to bounce it to someone else, you're welcome to.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to my colleague. That's actually a great question to set up what I was going to say, which is that in a moment, my intention is to defer it for another meeting to meet with multiple different departments. This is actually something I've been working on since earlier in my term regarding some of the litter throughout the different areas of the Cumberland River, some of the housing challenges in multiple camps that are along the riverfront. The safety concern has come up more recently we all know, obviously, that Riley Strain had gone missing in a section and presumed to have maybe fallen over that section. And then a few days later, actually, another individual fell down that hill, broke their back, broke both of their arms and legs. So this section regarding the fencing and safety piece is a very small area, just along the Gay Street connector, where we're looking at that, where there's currently no or limited fencing. But the more comprehensive bird's eye view is looking at the trash along the riverfront, the potential pollution from that trash, the housing situation. So I appreciate the question because I have gotten that, like, are we putting gates up at downtown Riverfront? No, that's not the goal. There's a small section that probably should be fenced that isn't, but it's more of a comprehensive look as we activate the riverfront. So I'd welcome any additional discussion or questions on it for today, and then after that would make my motion for a deferral. So I can wait for more discussion first.
While we're still on the bill, I think we might have some discussion, and then I'll come back to you if you want to make a deferral motion. Councilmember Horton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. To the council member's question on whether this is data-driven or not, I think there have been several incidences of loss of life or injury along the river, but I would say that we need to just look at, past instances of it, as well as, with the projected future growth of downtown, as well as the expansion of downtown to east of the river. I think the time to address the safety and cleanliness and security of the river is before this becomes a comprehensive issue for the city. So I'm grateful for the sponsor for bringing this, and I'm proud to be a co-sponsor.
Thank you, Councilman Horton. Seeing no other discussion, I'll return to the lead sponsor, Councilman Coupin, if you'd like to make a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for a 1 meeting deferral to the April 16th meeting.
Do I have a second? All right, properly moved and seconded. So all those in favor of a 1 meeting, or any discussion on that motion? My apologies. All right, all those in favor of a 1 meeting deferral, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, thank you. Recommend a 1 meeting deferral. Okay, 10 now. Thanks. Okay, next we have on bills on second reading, we have item 10, committee item 10. This is BL 2024-254 by Hancock, Huffman, Horton, and Webb. This amends Title 15 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws relative to infrastructure investment for off-site construction. Do we have a motion on this? All right, properly moved and seconded. Lead sponsor is not present. Would any of the other sponsors like to be recognized on this? It hasn't changed at all. Okay. Okay. It's all right if, I guess we can bring it up for discussion, even if a sponsor doesn't wish to speak on it, right? Okay. All right, so this bill's on the floor. It's been properly moved and seconded. Councilmember Cash, you are recognized.
I guess I'm just curious if the letter, I haven't seen the letter, is it wanting us to amend and then defer, or just defer?
So this committee, Director Darby just reminded me that we've already recommended approval of the amendment.
Okay.
We did that at the last committee meeting,
Okay.
and the amendment has not changed, but the amendment has not been applied on the floor, so it will continue to be filed as long as this stays on second reading or the amendment is withdrawn.
Okay, I move to defer 1 meeting.
All right, now we have a motion for 1 meeting deferral on the floor. Any discussion on 1 meeting deferral? Seeing none, all those in favor of recommending a 1 meeting deferral? Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend a 1 meeting deferral. Okay, here we go, folks. Up next, we have committee item 11. This is BL 2024-258 by Coupin, Porterfield, Gamble, and others. This declares a surplus of certain real property and authorizing the Metropolitan Government's execution and delivery of a master development agreement and ground lease agreements related thereto, an amended and restated site coordination agreement, a campus operations and use agreement, a declaration, and other documents and agreements relating to the development of a portion of the East Bank Stadium campus. Do we have a motion on this? And a second. Thank you. Properly moved and seconded. All right, so I'll go to lead sponsor, Councilmember Coupin. You've got the bill. You've also got the First Amendment. We've got 4 amendments. What is should we just, let's go to, oh, okay. Thanks. We'll go to you, Councilman Cooper, lead sponsor, Coupin, lead sponsor, and you've got the First Amendment as well.
Great, thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone who's worked so hard on this. I know the administration's spent a lot of timeless hours on this deal, and we're excited to have a 99-year affordability daycare. Today was announced that there's an MOU with La Una and union members, so this will be a union-built project, which is really exciting, and there's so much more in it. So really proud to carry this, but really there's so many other people that worked hard on it, planning, and many other departments. So really excited for that. Chair, would you prefer I move all the amendments, or I can just move mine and then we can go around? I'm up to your preference.
So two of the amendments we don't have a lead sponsor present for. So I'm happy to help talk through what those are as we get to those. But yeah, if you want to just run through the list since
Sure.
you've got the first one.
Cool. So then I would like to move Amendment 1 for approval.
All right, Amendment 1 is properly moved and seconded. Y'all can find this in your amendments packet. Could you tell us a little bit about what Amendment 1 does?
So Amendment 1 has multiple just administrative clarifications in it, some pieces of the agreement that were not originally included that needed to be included, some calculation information, some exhibits that needed to be clarified. There are a couple pieces that still had to be drafted when the original document was filed. So it does a multitude of things, but it is a just kind of an administration amendment, and I'm supportive of it and happy to move it.
Any discussion on Amendment 1 from committee members or other council members present? Seeing no discussion on Amendment 1, all right, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of Amendment 1, please say aye. Any opposed to Amendment 1? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval of Amendment 1. I'll go back to Councilmember Coupin for a motion on the next amendment.
I would like to move Amendment 2.
All right, properly moved and seconded. Can you tell us, I've got it pulled up as well, but can you tell us a little bit about what Amendment 2 does?
Is Amendment 2, is that your amendment, Chair?
No, I can help with that one. This is Porterfield's amendment, which
Okay.
if I believe added some language about affirmative marketing for the affordable housing units. And adds headers for other sections. I bet that if there's any of these we'd like explanation with the sponsors not present, that there's folks here who could help.
Totally. Yeah, I think it adds some clarification around the marketing for the affordable housing component. Like you said, some headers and some other details in that section. But again, I've reviewed all these and very supportive.
Thank you. So any further discussion on Amendment 2 from Porterfield? Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would it be possible to move this amendment to the heel, and just in case Councilmember Porterfield gets here? Do they need to come in order? Does one supersede the other?
The heel of this discussion
Yes, the heel of this
item,
discussion.
or of the, we can move this to the heel of the discussion if that's all right. If there's no objection, we'll move this amendment to the heel.
Great.
And we'll proceed to Amendment 3 with a asterisk by 2 to come back to it. All right. Councilmember Coupin, recognized.
And also, if the administration wants to weigh in, if they feel like they've got context on it, they want to offer that would answer my colleague's question, I'm open to that as well, if that's easier. But happy to go either direction.
Without objection, we will go back to Amendment 2, recognize the administration table for an explanation of Amendment 2.
Thanks, Chair. So this was language suggested by Councilmember Porterfield, supported by the administration as a friendly amendment that beefs up the marketing requirements for the affordable housing units. And we've talked to our housing folks in the planning department, and the language as it appears now in the amendment matches up very well with what is required for any organization that gets Barnes funding anyway. So the new language is language that works and has been, similar requirements exist for the Barnes Fund already.
Thank you for that explanation. Any other questions, or are we comfortable voting on this, not knowing if Councilmember Porterfield is on her way or not?
Yes, I appreciate that explanation. That's very helpful.
Thank you. Any other discussion, questions on Amendment 2? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of Amendment 2, please say aye.
Aye. Any
Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval of Amendment 2. 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Do you want to move my amendment, Councilman Coupin? I'll recognize you. Councilmember Coupin.
I would love to move Amendment 3 with a explanation from our chair, please.
Do we have a second? All right, properly moved and seconded. Thank you, Councilmember Coopin. So this amendment is the result of a lot of discussion in the East Bank Committee and between myself and various stakeholders, Fallon Company and the administration. So appreciate everybody's cooperation on these points. So this amendment does really 5 things. First, it codifies the intent of the Metro government to build streets on the East Bank that are complete and are safe, and it does that by referencing the standards in the Vision Zero Action Plan, the Imagine East Bank Vision document, the mayor's executive order, to kind of ensure that we're getting safe and complete streets here on the East Bank that are constructed. The second thing it does is we wanted to set a floor for the number of family suitable, which we define those as 2 and 3 bedroom units in the affordable housing buildings. I will say, I was initially hoping to get a much higher number than 15%, but what is in this amendment and what is hopefully going to make it into the agreement is a floor of 15%, with a lot of stakeholders, such as the affordable housing partners on the project, committing to really trying to do more than 15, but they did not want to commit to something that they thought they might get into trouble financing. So 15 is the floor. I'm, really hoping that we see a press release in the future that we're looking at 28, 36% affordable housing units in those 2 and 3 bedroom units in those affordable housing buildings, but 15% is what we could get in the document, and that's what's here before us today as part of this amendment. Third thing, in the workforce development program for the project, initially it was presented as there was a particular certification that could be used for workforce development. That was the NCCER certification, which I'm sure is a great certification, but there's some, excuse me, there's some great programs here in town, such as the Music City Construction Careers that do not use that certification. So we talked with Fallon, talked with the administration about opening that up to any state or federally registered apprenticeship program, rather than specifying NCCER specifically. I believe Fallon and the administration were comfortable with that, and so that is here in this amendment to open up the range of acceptable apprenticeship programs. Fourth, in talking about kind of workforce standards for the project, we know that healthcare is a huge component of workers' compensation, of their expenses. And we asked that Fallon would take that information in about how different employers handle that and consider that in their bid weighing process, and they agreed to do that. So that is great for the workforce side. Again, last thing this does, the last thing this adds, there's a lot of other great stuff in the workforce development part here, but it includes an agreement that workers will be appropriately classified as employees or independent contractors in accordance with all applicable laws and not misclassified to undermine paying an hourly wage equal to or higher than the living wage in Nashville as updated each year. So that is to protect against misclassification of workers and to make sure that the folks bidding on these jobs are not using misclassification to try to cut corners on benefits and pay for their folks. Are there any questions about that explanation or what this amendment accomplishes? Seeing none, ready to take a vote on this? Okay, all those in favor of Amendment 3, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval of Amendment 3. I've still got 10. Thank you. All right, we will go back to the lead sponsor, Councilman Coopin. We have another amendment.
All right, would like to move Amendment 4.
All right, we've got a motion on 4. Do we have a second? All right, Councilmember Coopin, if you'd like to give us an explanation of 4, or we could go to the administration for an explanation of 4.
I can take a stab at this one. This one is asking, from Councilwoman Suara, is asking the Fallon Company to make a good faith effort to have the daycare that is in the East Bank development prioritize spots for the people that live in the building that houses the daycare. So making sure that the people that actually live in that building have a first crack at the spots. It's not mandating it, but encouraging a good faith effort.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions or discussion on Amendment 4 from Councilmember Suara? All right, I'm not seeing any. All those in favor of Amendment 4 by Suara, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval of Amendment 4. All right, Councilmember Coopin, you've got, we'll go to you for a motion on the bill as amended.
I'd like to move the bill as amended.
All right, properly moved and seconded. If you have any explanation or if we have any discussion, we can move into it. All right, no explanation. Any discussion on the bill as amended? All right, Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Director Mendez on the amazing job he has done in making this a very open and transparent process. And I think he's worked really hard to have the interest of the taxpayer and the citizen in mind. And this is a great project that it seems like a win-win all around. So yay, we can do it.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I'll echo that sentiment. Huge thanks to former Councilmember Bob Mendez in the mayor's office now for his hard work on this. Also wanted to thank the lead sponsor and the vice chair of the East Bank Committee for kind of shuffling around the timing of this legislation to accommodate the East Bank Committee's schedule and the ability for us to take a deep dive into this and work through some of these issues. So very appreciative of that. I recognize Councilmember Ellis. Councilmember Ellis.
I just wanted to take the privilege as well to say thank you, Mr. Mendez, for ushering through this deal as a trusted leader in in my community and in Nashville as a whole. I trust that you were a good partner with Fallon in operating it on behalf of the Metro taxpayers and saved us, me in particular, a lot of time from delving into the details because you know, you have that trusted advisor cap on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor of the bill as amended, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, we recommend approval of the bill as amended. All right, next we have Committee Item 12. This is BL 2024-291 by Porterfield, Coopin, Welsh, and Parker. This amends Section 12.41.080C of the Metropolitan Code of Laws to allow the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, NDOT, to charge and collect fees for the use of public right-of-way in connection with applications for valet parking permits. Do we have a motion? Properly moved and seconded. So I am a sponsor on this. I can give a little bit of an explanation, but we might want to go to NDOT folks if we need an explanation, or we can go to whoever pulled this for a question. Okay, Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm perfectly happy having the Traffic and Parking Commission set the fees. I just wondered if they would be set to the same standards of that fee having to be based on actual cost.
All right, we have Director Alarcon in the back. Director, if you would please introduce yourself.
Yes. Good afternoon, Diana Alarcon, Director over the Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure. Actually, yes, the fee structure is actually based on our current average rate pay. And so we've now made sure that everything's in line. So what we charge someone who may reserve a meter for a day for use for something else, that's how we are actually using it in the equation of the valet fee. So it's consistent. So if that fee adjusts, so would the valet fee. So we've just are making it consistent across the board with every of the fee structures we have.
And thank you, Director. And I'll say that I served a few years ago on a committee that was led by Jeff Hammond, who was at NDOT at the time, that took a close look at how we were pricing our curb for valet use. This is pretty much in line with a lot of the discussion that we had at the time. I think that implementation ended up being kind of slowed because we wanted to be sensitive to businesses that were experiencing a lot of changes with the pandemic and coming out of that, and give business an opportunity to normalize before we shifted the sands beneath them on terms of valet pricing. So I think it's a good approach, and I'm supportive of it. So any other discussion on this? Seeing none. Okay, so we're going to take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? Excellent. Recommend approval. All right, we got a few more items, folks. I think just two. All right, committee item 14. This is BL 2024-293 by Evans, Porterfield, Vo, and Ewing. This amends Chapter 15.64 and Chapter 16.04 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws to restrict fences in the floodway and floodplain and to require a fence permit for all fences to be constructed within Nashville and Davidson County. We have the lead sponsor. Oh, I'm sorry. Can we get a motion? Properly moved and seconded. And we have the lead sponsor here who I'm happy to recognize first, Councilmember Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment.
Would any member like to move the amendment? All right. Seconded, properly moved and seconded. Thank you, Councilmember Evans Siegel. So you've got your amendment. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about what it does.
Yeah, so basically overall the bill is around fencing in the floodplain and floodway. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But the amendment in particular does two different things. One, it incorporates NDOT as a reviewer for a line of sight review as part of a permitting process. And it also changes the effective date of the legislation to September 1st of 2024.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions on the amendment? Discussion? Seeing none, all right, we'll take a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, all right, recommend approval 10-0-0 on the amendment. And we will, do we need a motion? Can a committee member please move the bill as amended? Properly moved and seconded. So we'll go back to the lead sponsor, Councilmember Evans. We've now got a motion on your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this legislation, it kind of picks up from efforts made in 2018 and 2020. And now it's 2024 to have a conversation about fence permitting in Davidson County. So the way the legislation is written today, the first thing that it does, it's going to prohibit building a fence in the floodway or floodplain without the approval of Metro Water Services. And then additionally, it's going to enable the Codes Department to help create rules and regulations to be able to effectuate a permitting process, as well as being the entity that would issue a permit.
Thank you, Councilmember. I see Councilmember Evans Siegel. You're recognized, Councilmember.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank my colleague for bringing this. I do have a few questions about section I on the legislation that I think may be part Metro Legal, part Water Department question. My understanding of public utility easements is that often they are blanket, they're not limited just to the water department, and especially our urban lots where they're 10 or 15-foot deep easements, they actually go pretty far into the lot. My understanding is that the way most of them are written is that you can actually put a fence on it, but should the utility company damage that fence in accessing that easement, you would then be responsible yourself for repairing that fence, that there is no prohibition on it. So this seems like an expansion, but if Metro Legal could talk to that, has any research been done into this? And have we talked to NES and Piedmont and all of our public utility companies to see if they're set up to give written permission for fences on every easement in town?
All right, we'll go to the administration table. If you'd please introduce yourself, sir.
Tom Cross, Metro Legal. And you are correct on what the law generally is. If you are an easement holder, the owner of the fee can generally do whatever they want to that doesn't interfere with the easement holder's rights. And here, I would say that if you build a fence there, that's probably okay. But if the easement holder, in the exercise of their rights, needs to do something to the fence, or a brick mailbox or something like that, you're probably going to have to take care of that yourself.
Thank you. I think then I would like to move to defer this for for at least one meeting, because I do think that we shouldn't give utility companies the ability to prevent fences being built where they don't actually have that property right. It may be one thing where we can figure out that they have to sign that they know that if they put a fence there, they may have to move it, but requiring written permission to issue a permit to build a fence seems to be a pretty big expansion of the easement holders' rights.
I'm sorry, was that a motion?
Yeah, motion to defer for one meeting.
All right, we have a motion to defer for one meeting. Do we have a second? Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion on the deferral motion? I see Councilmember Evans. Councilmember Evans, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I was able to talk with the council member before we got started discussing this, and I have no issue with the deferral and the idea of exploring that a little bit further. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Evans. Any other discussion on one meeting deferral of 293? All right, let's take a vote. All those in favor of a one meeting deferral, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, thank you. Is it still 10? Thank you. All right, last item, folks. We have committee item 15. This is BL 2024-294 by Ewing, Weiner, and Vo. This amends section 15.64.170 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws regarding development of athletic fields within floodways. Do we have a motion? All right. Do we have a second? All right, properly moved and seconded. I don't see a sponsor present. Oh, Councilmember Vo, you are here. Excellent. Councilmember Vo, I can go to you for a brief explanation, or we can defer it if we'd like, just one meeting to give a little more, to have it track with the fence bill if we want. I'm sorry. Oh, did I not read the caption? Oh, I may have not read the caption, y'all. I'm sorry. So we're on item 15, committee item 15. This is BL 2024-294 by Ewing, Weiner, and Vo. This amends section 15.64.170 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws regarding development of athletic fields within floodways. Can we have a motion? All right, properly moved and seconded. Thank y'all. Any discussion on this? Councilmember Evans Siegel, you're recognized.
I think, Chair, if I'm understanding this correctly, we're basically saying that like tennis courts and basketball courts can no longer be built in floodplains by metro government. I'm just curious why. I mean, maybe water damages them, maybe not, but I'm just curious where this came from.
Has the water department been involved with the development of this bill? And all right, we will go back to the public podium to hear from some folks with Metro Water Services. If you could please introduce yourself.
I'm Tom Palco, Metro Water Services. So this particular language has come out of a case before the Stormwater Management Commission, where there was a private individual had built a sports field on the back of a yard in a floodway without permits. So back in 2010, whenever we had our big flood in 2010, the Metro Council put a bunch of prohibitions on what could and could not be built in the floodway. And then some things got added back in saying, oh, well, if it's a sports field, this and that. But this is to kind of clarify that if it's a sports field, it needs to be a public use sports field, and it has to be impervious. It can't be paved surfaces because typically if you have tennis courts, you also have pavement, you have fences, you have whatever else. And that kind of improvement is not what the original prohibition of stop building in the floodway was after May 2010. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, any other discussion or questions on this one? All right, seeing none, we'll take a vote on 2024-294. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval. All right, thanks for sticking with us, everyone, through a lengthy agenda. That concludes the business of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I believe that planning is up next.